Arganissima, New York. Your exotic skin, hair, and beauty source, and your one-stop shop for all your natural and organic skin and hair care, featuring authentic organic Moroccan oil and prickly pear seed oil and much more. Bringing you only the best, straight from the source and proudly produced in the USA. So what are you waiting for? Shop today. Arganissima, New York. Your beauty is our duty.
Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio. We're your host, Hurricane H. New day, new show, awesome topic. My guest is going to take us a lot of places, and we're going to learn new things that I'm here to learn about today. So she is a microbiome therapist, a functional medicine practitioner. She's also a spiritual counselor. She does other things such as filmmaking, photography, and she's a writer. So she is a lot. And she also has a huge story behind her success, I would say. Because I think, once you hear her story, you would know the motivation and incentive behind where she is today and who she is today. So without any further ado, I have with me Linn Rivers. Linn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here with you.
Oh, listen, not as much as I am, because I want to learn stuff. I mean, it's funny, you and I were talking just briefly, and what we talked about the mission of the channels, and it's really educate, enlighten, inspire, and motivate. And frankly, all those things are dear to my heart because I want to be educated. I want to learn. I want to be enlightened. I definitely want to be inspired and motivated. And that's really what it is. So I always say I'm the first customer here. So, I absorb it first, and, and that keeps me motivated. It's my fuel. So, and I love what you guys do. And when I say you guys, all the creators and my guests specifically, they just, you bring in a whole different light to the world, and you drive some good stuff for folks. And I think everyone that listens and watches these shows can benefit from them, at a level or another. And they can also, if not themselves, they can benefit others just by sharing the value. And you are resources. So I always say thank you for all the people out there that are doing the work, and all my guests specifically. So Linn,
yes.
Take us through your story. I mean, you're taking us back.
taking us back. So the reason I do what I do now is because I had a pretty rocky journey the first, honestly, basically 30 plus years of my life. It was constant turmoil. There was always one thing happening. And I started off at a young age, very sick, pneumonia when I was 1 and 3. I was in incubators. They had my arms tied down. The way that my parents spoke to me in those years really actually solidified a fear of the word love, because the way that they were saying, I love you in those moments was out of fear that I was going to die. So as a child, we internalized the feelings, not the words. And so I took love to mean danger, right? So I was afraid of saying I love you to anyone. And that stemmed a whole slew of PTSD throughout my entire life. Never saying I love you to my family. Every time they would say it, I would cringe and go into, fight or flight mode. And so that was one aspect of, the trauma from being ill. But then I also lost a family member every 2 years through the majority of my life. And my mom died when I was 15 years old, my grandma when I was 8, my other grandma when I was 10, my uncle, then it was just my whole family. It was a constant, struggle surrounding death and illness. And so I went through that. And then I went through other near-death experiences of almost dying from my organs shutting down at the same time that my partner was dying of the same colon cancer that my mom died of. And it was just kind of like this on and off battle, right? And my appendix ruptured a week before my dad died. There was just, it's honestly kind of comical to look back and think I never had a break. It was always just one thing after the other. And what that really brought me to, though, was how can I take my journey and work through my trauma? What did I need to see about it? How could I look at it from a different perspective? And how can I release those things so I stopped inviting in certain people who they were looking to die or they needed help with, their health in a romantic form? And so I started really looking at that and healing through the traumas and really understanding things from a bigger perspective. And then I also took everything of what were all of these people teaching me as far as health is concerned? Why does this keep happening? And what is the Western medical system actually doing for these people? And how can we switch this? You know, because the Western medical system has its place in acute conditions. When my appendix ruptured, I definitely wanted to be in the hospital. But anything outside of that, if we really want to heal, we need to get to the root cause. And so that's when I started diving into functional medicine, because I realized that at the core of every illness, there is a root cause that is making that happen. You know, cancer is not something that we need to be targeting itself. We need to target, why did that cancer happen? Where is the root of all of this? And through all of my family members and a partner dying of cancer, I really started realizing that we cannot go after this one organ or this one condition. We need to figure out where the imbalance is in the body and start bringing it back into its natural balance. And then that way we can actually heal from a deeper level. And healing the physical is also healing the emotional, and vice versa. They all go hand in hand. And so my journey was just one thing after the other, really teaching me and going into schooling for different modalities that brought it into like the whole being, mind, body, spirit, right? We can't just focus on one. We need to heal all of them in order to be a whole person. And so that's what brought me to all of my modalities. You know, I guess you listed a few. I do functional medicine. I was a massage therapist, Reiki practitioner, yoga instructor, spiritual counselor, life coach, human design analysis. You know, I've done so much, and it literally is all just to bring a person back into being human, to being a healthy human being and not living in this sick society that we've just been kind of shoved into without, you know, opening our eyes and asking questions.
All right. So Lynn, that's a lot. First I have a question. It's got to sound funny, but when did you learn all this? I mean, because you do look young, and that's a lot of stuff that you've covered there in the shorter time. So whatever it is, it's worked, for you, and it's working. But it's a lot, that you've achieved, and
Right.
listening to your story, I think for anyone watching or listening right now, we need to just take a deep breath sometimes and be grateful for everything we have in life, because you had a rough, literally, upbringing, because I mean there's no other way to look at it, and
Right.
not for any of your fault. I mean, it is the stuff that was designed around you, and we everybody goes through one minute thing in their life, and oh my god, the world is ending, right?
I know,
only
I know.
only when we hear stories like yours, where, like, you're not catching a break, and it's just, I mean, some people would have lost hope, some people would literally just go suicidal, sometimes they'll just give in and give up, life, and that kind of thing. But again, listening to you today and all this stuff, and the fact that you turned everything and you kind of learned how to, not only for you but for others, to maybe avoid what it is that they've gone through, it's a great hope for people. And I think if you're watching or listening, it's always good to hear a story that maybe, I'm not going the only one going through the worst. People have gone through it and they made it. And so when I see that people are making it through and even thriving, that should give me a little glimpse, like, hey, I got this, I can do this too. And not everybody's got the motivation to do it on their own, right? And so sometimes you need that little boost. And I love to hear that. That's why I said your story is definitely a big part of today's show and discussion, because I don't think of anyone, and I don't think there's anyone that is not going through some level of turmoil in their life. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's work, at home, health, there's something going on. If not even us, it's our environment. At
Right.
least, you hear the news, you hear this, there's something that's affecting us, and it affects us physically and mentally. And,
Mhm.
we just had a few shows about mental health and things like that. It is happening, and it's real. And you said it. I mean, you don't, it's like, you get a deck of cards, and you got a dealer that gives you different things, and whatever, hand you got dealt with, you dealt, that's what you're going to deal with in real life, right? So, and
Right.
there's no, it's funny. I don't know if you play solitaire. I
I do every day, actually.
all right. So I only play when I'm flying or whatever, because it's pretty cool. I just kind of get my brains
Mhm.
working a little bit. But you know what? There are some times where you can, no matter what you do, you get to the end, there's nothing you can do. You have to reset. And sometimes that's what life is about, and you don't lose hope until you do everything expire, remove. Well, life is probably even better because you don't expire, remove, because there's always a way out. There's always going to be something better. And I do tend to believe that, the worst case is when you're on the lowest level, there's only, one way is up. And so therefore you can always lift up. So it's important to just highlight that. That was the first thing. Now, I love what you said about Western medicine. There is a place for it. And yes, it is designed to help and maybe not cure or maybe not prevent, but really just to prevent, maybe to solve the minutes problem. Like if you, to your point, you need surgery,
acute, yes,
it's going to help it, but it's not going to do the long. Now you can you can manage the symptoms, you can manage some of the stuff. Sometimes it works. I mean, different types of illnesses can be cured with conventional medicine. But you studied Oriental medicine. You went to the holistic stuff. You've gone traditional, and I love what you said about the root cause. I mean, in business we say root cause analysis of things, right?
Exactly.
In health we should say the same. You got to go through the root cause of what drives what's going on, in our health. And most of the time, whatever is happening because we have bad habits. We have, I don't know, bad, food that we take. Maybe we have different lifestyle and things that are affecting our health. Maybe the environment we live in is bad. Because I mean, depends on where you live. If you live in I don't know, maybe next to one of those, refineries, oil refineries, there's a good chance there's a cancer, number that's going to be higher there, right? So these are things that we have to be aware of. But you've done that. Now, functional medicine practitioner, let's define that for our audiences specifically.
Great. So technically what I do is my clients come to me and they are working through something. It can be as simple as I'm having digestive issues, which that might not sound so simple to some people because it can be really, really aggravating to not understand what's happening. But it can be all the way to diabetes, to cancer, to illness, mental diagnosis, anything of that sort. And what we do is I test them on several different levels. I do micronutrient deficiencies, and I do GI maps, which is microbiome therapy. So finding out what's happening inside their gut and finding out if there's any dysbiosis. And I also do a lot of other tests like hormonal panels, depending on who I'm working with, because unfortunately, a lot of what's happening in our society is we are not hormonally balanced. I mean, a good portion of the population has a hormonal imbalance, and we are micronutrient deficient because we are losing our nutrients in the food that we eat, especially when you're eating a conventional diet. And our gut health, which I'm sure we will get into, that actually drives we're finding over 80% of what's happening in the majority of our body is driven by what's happening in our gut. And so through functional medicine, we look at all of these different tests, and some doctors will run different tests, but I fine-lined mine to what I see is the most important for my clients to know, so they have a basis to work off so that they can build up, right? And so we use those tests and we figure out what's happening and why is your body not functioning properly. And when you look at something as simple as let's take magnesium, for example. Magnesium, we think about that as like, oh, it's the calm, the calm supplement. We take it to feel calm, or we take it for muscle relaxant. The reality is magnesium plays a role in over 300 chemical processes in the body. Without magnesium, without the proper amount of magnesium in our body, we can have digestive issues, we can have mental disorders, we can have muscle fatigue, just super simple things, but also really big processes that we don't think about. And so we need to find out, what are you depleted in? What do you not have enough of? Because if we don't have enough of those micronutrients, our body's not going to be able to function properly. So when that happens, our organs can start malfunctioning, and then we start having those symptoms. And then that's where other stuff starts coming into play, and we can start having cancerous cells, and everything's not functioning because our blood's not functioning properly. Our organs aren't actually moving. And it's really simple when you look at it. But the bottom line is, when you go to the Western medical system, they diagnose symptoms. They're like, you have this symptom, take this drug. That drug then starts initiating another slew of symptoms that then you have to work with. And it's never actually trying to figure out what's out of balance. What do we not have enough of? What do we need to give you more of? Is your estrogen too high? Because in our society, estrogen dominance is actually a huge role in a lot of illness. that goes undiagnosed. I had endometriosis from the age of 16 and did not realize it till I was 28 years old. And so I went through years of struggle with this thing that the doctors would just keep pushing, like, oh no, it's just this, like, don't worry about it, it'll go away. And it never did, because they were never addressing what was wrong. And so that is what I do for people. We find out, what are your symptoms, and let's find out why they are happening. It's not just let's mask the symptoms, let's give you this drug. It's about going down and getting to the root and actually healing, so you can live a happy and healthy life and not have to go down that road of taking pills and taking more pills and then just getting worse and worse as you get older. We're meant to thrive into very old age. I look at my grandpa, and he was 90 when he died. He was the only one who lived to be old. All the rest of my family died before they were 50. And he was the only one to live to be old. And he took care of his body. He ate mindfully. He knew what he was doing. He had a fasting period, and he's the only one that I saw, and he always took my advice. And so it was kind of like this beautiful thing. He was the only one willing to listen to me. And he thrived. And it was that reminder that we're meant to do that. We're meant to be healthy, older individuals. It's not something that you shouldn't have to look at being old as like, oh, well, when I get old, I'm going to be sick and I'm going to be weak. We know now, we have plenty of proof out there that growing old does not have to look that way. And that is where I come in. I come in to help people actually live happy and healthy lives from just living from a really rooted and grounded space, and being a human who eats healthy and who takes care of themselves mentally, physically, and spiritually.
All right. So that's quite a bit there. But it's amazing. I'm listening to you, and you gave the example of your grandfather. And you mentioned 90, which is a pretty advanced age. And you said it. I mean, he lived happy. I've actually seen people in the 90s that looked, literally like 60s. And they were pretty active and stuff, dancing, doing their thing. And so I can relate to that from not personal experience. I mean, I've had family members that went to that age and beyond. But it's, to your point, it's, we can do that. The problem, I think, that we have today. Now, we're in the States, but if you go across the world, it varies from, culture to culture because of various things, the way we eat, the way we live, the stress that comes in our lifestyle, these days, and all the stuff varies because of cultures and different things, right? Even the environment, we talked about environment and what's around us makes a big difference, right? You talked about, root cause. And so I want to break that down a little bit, because it seems that we have a consensus across everybody that I met with, and every interview and every show that we talked about health and nutrition. There's one thing that is in common. We are lacking stuff. Our body is not getting the necessary nutrients that it's supposed to have. And it seems that somehow our diet business, our world that we live in today, we have almost veered away from the real nutritional stuff, the real food, into some fake food. And I'm not calling it, I'm calling it fake food, yes, but it's really interesting, because it's not really the natural way of food. We have packaged things, we have additives, we have all the different things and it tastes good. The stuff tastes really good, and it's addictive, and you can't get rid of it. You enjoy it more. I mean, from the candies that we have as kids, to the snacks that we have when we go to the movies, to the fast food that we have when we drive in, or we're like at work, whatever. All this stuff is the new society. It's created these things. And it's also industries that have, they thrive financially, and they deliver these products, right? And we just get hooked on them. And there's marketing that's backing that. Well, I'm not against, all that, profitability and make, capitalism work and all that stuff. That's one way, people have the right to do it. But we as consumers, I would say, we have the right, to look out for ourselves and make those decisions. I think that's where the problem is. Like, people can tell you whatever, they can do whatever. You can put everything in front of me. If I don't want it, I'm the one who's actually consuming. I'm the one who's taking the action. But the problem is, because it's like you're part of this society and you want to fit in, and so you therefore start just conforming to everything else happening. And I think that's that's true across all the village that we call Earth today, because we live in this global thing now that is very, attached all over the place. So you can connect everywhere. But, some people have made the choices that are healthier. But
Mhm.
most of us are still not making those choices. There's a lot of talk about fitness and wellness and eating health, holistic stuff, but you're talking to the basic elements. I mean, you talked about hormones, and
Mhm.
more. You said, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned something about 80% whatever of us that are imbalanced with our hormones. That in
Yes,
itself can be, catastrophic. I mean, hormones regulate everything, right? So the thyroid
exactly.
problems is big, and then ultimately everything else happens. You talked about magnesium as an example.
Mhm.
Who knew? I mean, I've had a show about magnesium specifically, and we have also counterparts in a wellness talk who actually, George Batista does a lot of the discussion on nutrients and supplements and stuff, and it's great stuff. But people are not aware of these things. We need to
Right.
make them aware and share with them more, and hopefully they'll stand. Even when you magnesium, right? So there's types of magnesium. Which one works? Which one has the most effects, and what quantities you need to have a day. It seems that our nutrition is shallow. It's not complete on a day-to-day basis. You talked about fasting in between, like your body's got to detox and do things. we're
Yes.
not we're not 100% there. I think, maybe some of us, because we are attached to this. Like I said, I'm the first customer. I listen to these things, so i
Mhm.
i apply some of it. But not everybody has gotten the message, if you want to call it that way, right? You
Right.
only get the message when you get sick. But
Right.
at that time it could be too late. So the idea is that we use your practice, and your expertise, for example, to really get us from a good starting point. I actually even had a couple of shows about kids nutrition, and I have another one scheduled tomorrow for that, to talk about kids. I mean, early on, things can be much better if we start early on. But even today, and it's unfortunate, but when you look at our food in schools, I mean, I see what my kids have at school. There's no stuff, and then when they come home, they don't want to eat regular food, and so they already and then adapted to that food concept, and they don't want to eat anything that is different. And so I make the joke about this, and probably in multiple shows I've stated this. I think we're going to lose our restaurants eventually because the menu is going to be limited. That becomes an industry obsolete because nobody's going to eat more than the 5 or 6 element that these kids today are eating. And then there's a big thing. Yeah, we talked about mental health yesterday and psychology, and the younger folks. I mean, there's a huge amount of youth with mental concerns, and so that's related to food. There's a lot of connection here in all of this. You got goosebumps there.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
So what do you say about that? I mean, I'm just kind of almost summarizing some of the stuff that you mentioned, but it resonates well because it is not a secret. We almost know what it is. We know when something's wrong. I mean, you're eating stuff that is really not food. I mean, you take somebody gave me this example the other day. A burger, like a McDonald's burger, that was like for a year or 2 years, and nothing actually,
Oh my God.
it's
Yeah.
it stayed exactly the same after a year or
Hmm.
two, and he's been using that same wrapper, over and over.
Yep.
Now, I'm not saying anything about McDonald's and whatever. I mean, they do this stuff, and I'm sure they have their own way of looking at it, but it's they wanted the biggest change, so unfortunately they get caught, quite a few times. But the fact is, they found the solution. It's great. I mean, the concept, you watch the movie, I loved. I mean, the business concept behind it. But that's the problem. We go to the business concepts, but we lose the health concept. Sometimes
Exactly.
for profits, we give no crap, if you want to call it, about everything else and the damage. Sometimes we don't even think that we are hurting people over generations to come. Maybe not this generation, but you said gut health. I mean, you're throwing all that stuff in. The body is not able to process it. Your microbiome, all your gut stuff and your flora, whatever that stuff that's moving in there is not doing its work. It's actually killing itself or it's dying. And now you have digestive issues, as you said, from your
Hmm.
stomach to your guts, you're constipated,
Hmm.
problems here and there. Constipation has other problems. And so one leads to the other, and it's all linked. Then you have
Yeah.
your chemicals in this world that we are being
Hmm.
bombarded with
Bombarded.
on a day-to-day basis. I mean, it's facts. I mean,
Hmm.
and by the way, anyone watching or listening, this is not a secret, folks. I mean, you know it. We choose not to talk about it. We choose to just
Right.
move on with it. I'm one of you guys too, and believe me, for a long time, it's like it is what it is. And even today, I could say it is what it is. I do my best, but there's certain things I can't really. You're still, if you decide to really live a healthy life, you're gonna probably have to remove yourself, go somewhere into the middle of
Right.
nowhere, and grow your own food, and maybe then you'll be happier and healthier. But that's maybe 0.1% of our universe that can do that. So we still have to adapt to where we are in our environments and still have some sort of a pathway towards healthier, and maybe preventative measures from the early days. I think that's the thing. So your formula, your work is really to help us and guide us from that moment, how to be better in our gut. And by the way,
Mhm.
gut health also has
Mhm.
functionality with the brain. I mean, there's discussions, there's a good connection there. So there's all these things. I mean, we are one unit as a body, and everything
Right.
is attached. I love what you said about the medicine, right? The acute piece. You have an illness, we cure. We have symptoms, we cure the symptoms. So
Mhm.
we make you not feel the symptoms, and therefore, like
Right.
the problem is gone. Now, some people can listen. I have great doctors that come on shows, and there's different opinions about different things. There is, like you said, there's a place for medicine the way it is, but not all of it is really. It's helpful to solve the problem. Like somebody mentioned, it's not healthcare, it's sick care. When you're sick, you get the help when you're sick. But can we be healthier? Can we live a vitality life, or life of vitality?
Right.
We've had a show about just vitality, right? Living at the higher level of your body and your potential. So all these things have real concepts, but we are aware. Many now with social media, with podcasts, with stuff, you get stuff. I mean, I can tell you, here's a good story. The reason we have this show is, believe it or not, when I started these programs about almost 3.5 years ago, the idea was that there is no health channel, there's no health radio. I have not heard of them. If there is one, I'd like to know which one, but I have not heard of one, at least not where I live. And so that was the concept. The idea is to bring these and resources for that
Mhm.
purpose. I mean, right now you wanted the resource, you got to Google, right? But even when you
Right.
Google, what are you going to Google for, right?
Exactly.
You're not sure what you're Googling for. So this brings us closer to a resource such as yourself. This gives us some element of knowledge. This doesn't take away from you having to actually meet someone in person and stuff, but at least it gives you, like, oh, it opens your eyes, your ears.
Right.
Oh, wow. All this stuff is happening around me. I need to be more careful. Maybe you'll take the steps necessary to do better. And that's where we are. So now let's talk about, you talked about the gut health and the hormones
Mhm.
and in the nutrients. So how do we do that in real society today? Because that is not as easy as it sounds.
I mean, technically it can be. So first off, the one point that I wanted to make that was fun is when you're talking about the kids, I literally just had a conversation last night about the school systems and how it's just set to make them, fail, basically, the way that they feed them, the chocolate milk, all of that. We had a really good conversation about that, and about how a lot of kids will have mental disorders and no one knows that. Think about, look, is it stemming from something inside? What are their micronutrient deficiencies? What is their gut health doing, right? So I love that you talked about that, because it was a really big point for me yesterday. And as far as the gut health is concerned, we can no longer avoid or hide from the fact that we know this stuff. That's where we need to take responsibility and to start realizing, like, we have this information now, what are we going to do about it? Okay, and with the gut, we now know that our microbiome plays, our serotonin levels, for example, which is a big component of our mental stability, it plays over 95% into what happens with that form of mental stability. And we know this, but yet we continue to prescribe all these different medications to mask the symptoms of what's happening, when the reality is the symptoms is our body saying, hey, something's not right. And as long as we continue to mask those, we're not ever going to understand what's actually happening. And so it's just going to continue creating vicious cycles of illness in some forms, right? And to start with the gut, I think it's important to tell people that 90% of our being is microbiome. We are literally about only 10% human cells. The rest of us is microbiome, okay? It's all of these different funguses and parasites and bacteria, and we're literally feeding trillions and trillions of babies that break down our foods and send them to where it needs to be. And it breaks down everything for us and allows our body to do what it needs to do. When we do not have a healthy gut microbiome, it throws off all of our digestive system, that which in turn throws off our mental wellness. It's just all so connected. And we're just diving into this. We know so much about it, and yet it's barely the tip of the iceberg, right? So there's so much that we're learning. But the reality is, we have dysbiotic guts because of the antibiotics that we were fed, especially in the 80s and 90s. I mean, we were given them like they were candy. They're like, oh, you have a cold, take an antibiotic. Oh, you have this, like take an antibiotic. When we didn't understand that it was damaging our gut microbiome so much. And it's, to a certain point, some of it's irreversible. And we have to really look at that and ask, like, what are we going to do about this? And how are we going to start looking at our gut as the core of the majority of our illness? I mean, they're looking at it for Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, all of these different diseases that we're finding now. Like in 10 years, we could have a probiotic that says, oh, you have Parkinson's, take this probiotic. Right. And we're getting to that point because we understand the depth of what happens here is really important for in our entire process of our entire body. And I think it's just one of the things that we have to start looking at and asking, what are we eating? Do we have the gut microbiome to digest the food that we're eating? In return, that allows us to absorb all of our nutrients. Right? If we're not absorbing our nutrients, then we're not going to be getting everything to the places that it needs to go. And so really, when you look at it, it's kind of funny, right? The core of our being is the core of our health and wellness, right? And so we look at it and like, this is our core of our body. Our stomach is the core. And that is what sets the tone for everything else. And so it makes sense when you look at our society and see how unhealthy we are, right? And it's like, look at their gut. Like, I mean, their gut says it all. Right. And that's another example is to look at people who have all of these digestive illnesses and they look healthy. But when you actually go in and you find out that what their gut's doing, if they're dysbiotic, everything starts making sense. It makes so much sense when you look at it from an internal perspective, which is what I do. I literally, look at people's, poop and figure out like what's happening, like what's going on in your body. And so, yeah.
Also, so there's first of all, it's funny because you said that, we have these trillions of creatures living, it's like, it made me think about like, it's alive. It's alive.
Exactly.
We're alive. But that's it's funny, it sounds, but it is alive and it's real live stuff that is happening.
Yes.
And if we're killing them, we're certainly killing ourselves as well. And so slowly but surely our functions are not there. And it's amazing. You said the core of the name core actually is pretty powerful because when you think about it, that is where it's all happening. I mean, you can't live without eating, right? So and drinking. So all that stuff is processed. This is the engine where it's all happening.
Yes.
But we all, well, I'm not going to generalize. I mean, maybe there's a few people that really do it right, and I think the majority of us may still not be doing it right. You mentioned something about the antibiotics especially in the 80s and stuff. Now, I wanted to ask a question about that. We know that genetics are real, and we know that, generations do pass on some genetic coding and things like that, and some features, to the next generation. If we were to cancel out genetic, let's say if the antibiotics hurt the generation before us or our generation, I'm assuming that there's definitely some impact to our next generation. So our progeny, our kids are probably going to have some, effect, to a mutation level or whatever that is actually impacting them. And so in generation 3 or 4 from now, these folks are going to be completely different from us for whatever it is, worse or better. I'm probably worse if this continues. But the idea is genetics are real arts. They're the real science. And the concept that if you destroy something. Now, the question is, I'm not being... how can I say it, controversial here, but when you think about it, do people think about these things, and what the impact is in the future? Probably not. That's the problem. That's the question in every day. People live the moment. If I am, trying to look at profitability, as we talked about, I may not be thinking about next generations and what's the impact for them. I just think about how we can make the most profits today. And so maybe I produce some time. I mean, we talked about in a different show, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, the food that existed doesn't exist. Well, the food that exists today didn't exist then. And, you know, go
Correct.
100 years ago, you bring someone in from the old New York City, you know, to a supermarket, like, am I in heaven or something? I mean,
Mhm.
it's kind of look weird to them. I mean, just the concept, right? You go back 200 years, I mean, forget about it. It's like, well, what the hell? Everything has changed, and it looks good. It looks attractive. It's visually enhancing. You know, the tastes are there. I mean, the taste buds are getting stimulated left and right. I mean, they taste, you know, everything. And again, they throw in all the triggers, the salts,
Mhm.
the sugars. I mean, everything tastes, you know, the sweetness, you know, the flavors, and most of it is artificial. It's not even, you know, a natural stuff. So we know that, and you know, we get used. Some of us get like, and what we noticing today, and the discussion we've had discussions about cancers and things like that. There is more cancers today than there pretty much ever. And again, there's got to be a link direct to what we put into the body. And there has been people that have survived, or actually that turned the tide by switching their lifestyle and their eating habits and the nutrients. And really, to your point, they went holistic and they went to, like, you know, more of an oriental, you know,
Mhm.
traditional, you know, everything. And they made it. I mean, I had a show recently, and we talked about hemp, you know, and the CBDA, which is, you know, a very uh, uh, controversial discussion in its own, but it is real, and it's happening. How we reverse, you know, in the case of our guest, you know, she talked about how her mom had cancer and she was terminal, and because of the hemp, you know, and CBDA, you know, and the treatment, that whole thing, you know, got reversed, and she was cancer free in a few months. So these are real examples. Now, again, I can't verify the examples personally because I'm not testing the stuff, so I take your word for it. But and I always tell the people, listen, guys, you can listen to all of us. You don't have to believe a word. You know, just do your homework and do your research, do your due diligence. That's it. But, you know, if you do find, you know, a need, we have the experts, talk to them, and they have the credentials behind this. They have the testimonials. They can make it work. So that's where we are now. Now, you mentioned estrogens. I think that's what you said earlier. Estrogen, like, you know, the hormones.
Estrogen.
Estrogen,
Mhm.
yeah. So you mentioned that earlier, and you said something about we are pretty much all deficient, or something of that nature. Let's talk
So,
about that.
okay, so with estrogen dominance, so a good portion of women, it's over 75% of women have estrogen dominance. And it's actually not uncommon in men as well because of our society and how we take in estrogen through plastic, you know, through the bowls that we eat, through foods that we eat. And so there's actually quite a bit of estrogen dominance in men as well. But it really shows in women because of progesterone deficiency. And when we don't have enough progesterone, it actually causes the estrogen dominance to wreak havoc on our entire system, right? And so everything plays into back to the gut also, because your gut metabolizes estrogen. And if that's not metabolizing estrogen, then that can contribute to more estrogen dominance. So it's kind of this vicious cycle. And so that's why I test all three of those, is because they all play into each other. Okay, the micronutrient deficiencies, the gut microbiome, and the hormonal therapy. And so when you're estrogen dominant, that can cause things that you're never going to correlate to hormones, you know, like heart palpitations or anxiety, you know, the cramps, of course, all of the things that come along with a menstrual cycle. Yes, those are going to intensify as well. But there's also the parts of like even dry lips. Like I'm not talking like just like, oh, my lips are dry. I'm talking like cracked, scaly lips. That can be estrogen dominance. Heart palpitations, that can be estrogen dominance. Mental instability, like having, you know, outbursts of anger outbursts, that can be estrogen dominance. And people start looking at these things from a different perspective, thinking like, oh, well, maybe I am bipolar, or maybe I have, you know, all of these different disorders, and never realizing that it could be due just from one of these factors causing an imbalance in your hormones. And I know that I was talking to one guy. I have a tendency to go out to eat. I will be sitting by myself and give it 5-10 minutes, and there will be someone sitting at the table with me telling me their life story and, you know, crying and trying to figure out what's happening. And this happens all the time. And it was a couple months ago that I went out to eat at my favorite restaurant, and this guy, people will find the funniest excuses to like start up a conversation with me. And he's like, so how's the pizza here? And I wasn't eating pizza. And it was just like, pizza's good. I was like, I highly recommend it. And we started conversation, and sure enough, 5 minutes later, he's like, "Can I sit here with you?" And I'm like, "Yes, come and sit." And so he sits down, and about 10 minutes in, he's crying, talking to me about how he just feels like he's not sure that he can go on in this life because of something that he's dealing with. And we walk through it, and he ends up, a client of mine, and I do a hormonal panel on him, and his progesterone levels were through the roof. Now, men should not have high levels of progesterone, nor should they have high levels of estrogen. His progesterone was off the charts. It wasn't even on the scale of like what the test would read. And that was where I was like, we need to get this down. Like, this is why you're so emotional and you're so anxious all the time. And he just really felt like he wanted to check out. He's in his 50s. He wasn't doing well. He didn't have muscle tone. He just felt like he did not feel like he could live in that space anymore. And sure enough, he got his stuff in check. He, started working on what he needed to do, and he started feeling better. And he's like, I didn't know that I could be this clear. I didn't know that I could have this level of really what he called, it was okayness. Like, he just felt okay for once, and that was like just like the beginning of him getting better. And it really does. It's really, I have fine-lined it to where it is that simple, to where we can look at a few things and ask, like, are these things out of balance? Yes, you're going to have symptoms. If they're in balance, you're going to be okay. And so that's one of my biggest highlights. People really need to understand what's happening in their body. What are their hormones doing? Because if one hormone is out of balance, it can shoot everything else off. It can cause thyroid problems, hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, which really creates like a slew of different symptoms for people, including digestive health, and gaining weight. And when you really look at the human body, we're not meant to be overweight. Even if you're a bigger boned person, you're still not meant to be overweight. And it's really simple to come down and be like, let's check these things. Let's get you back on track. If one thing's out of whack, it's going to start throwing off everything else. So we need to look at you as an entire organism, not one piece.
Love the holistic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's, first of all, I'm smiling a little bit because of the story you gave about the person that came to you, and for at least from a man's perspective, crying is not something that we like to do. So, but the fact is, if your hormones are kicking, and to your point, he's got the highest level beyond where they need to be on the chart. That's tendencies to have a different emotions, and it's going to drive that emotion. So
exactly,
you're not meant to be that way. So I'm listening to you like, wow, that is a tough one. I mean, but you would not know. That's the thing. Like, if you have those kind of things, you'd have to check. And, listen, I have a regular doctor, and I tell you, he does a full workout on my stuff every year. I mean, he runs every single thing to the genetics level, right? And he can, they do this whole thing now with 10 years. They kind of map out a little bit the risks and all the stuff. Now, I don't know how that's different from the work you do. I mean, ultimately, that's just more lab stuff that he does, but you're doing it at the gut level, which is, again, unique and different. The only thing I did was the colon guard, which I chose versus doing the colonoscopy. So that was just my choice. I don't know about, that concept. I'm still not, although I've been told that I should, I'm still kind of iffy about it. I mean, when you hit the 50s, now you have to worry about prostate as a male, and you have to worry about your colon, and all this stuff. So it's part of life, right? But you're right. If we do everything else correctly, we should be able, if the hormone stuff is working properly, everything else should be, in check. So let's talk about that. Now, someone, anybody watching and listening right now, if they really want to turn their life and get a real, they can do the work that I've done and things like that. But if they wanted to do a secondary opinion or an additional opinion based on the gut stuff and get that part, I mean, obviously they can reach out to you, but let's say, are you all over the place? I mean, are you able to work with people anywhere? Okay.
I work with people all over the world. Yes.
Okay, good. So, that's important because, you wouldn't know where to start. I mean, you'll have to find someone who has similar practice, locally and then do the work. But we have you now, so we can start there, right? But the idea is that it is important, even as a test. And this is the part that, I think even last night we had a show that's going to air on Monday. The discussion was about, like, get a second opinion.
Yes.
Get a second opinion. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
you'll be surprised that maybe this practice is different. They may, order a particular test or some other stuff that's going to reveal different things, and maybe then you can have a bigger, the best picture, and then you take the course of action that you need. It's just a simple advice, but it can help. Don't
Right.
settle for one. Oh my God, the doomsday is here. Maybe not. And
Yes.
I had a whole show with someone who actually literally for 3 years was misdiagnosed.
I was just going to talk about that.
All right, let's talk about it because
Yes.
that's crazy.
I want to go down a rabbit hole with this because the importance of getting a second opinion is to remember that a lot of people turn their trust over to doctors so easily instead of remembering that they were trained. They are trained what to prescribe. They are trained what to tell their patients. And they are trained to just trust these people because they're in a white lab coat, right? Like they look the professional. So people just give them this trust instead of remembering that they went to school to learn specific things to prescribe, to treat. They're treating symptoms. Okay, always get a second opinion because one of the big things too is like you're talking about getting the colon test. And the reality is they're testing the physical body, right? So they're looking like, oh, you have some things going on in your colon. They're not asking, why do you have these things going on in your colon? That's what we need to know. That's why you need to dig in. The tests that I do differ because it's on a level of you can go get blood tests from your doctor, but whatever's happening in your blood that they find, it never will tell you why. It's never going to give you the why is this happening and how do I fix this? My tests show you are deficient in XYZ. You have an imbalance in this part of your body. This is how we correct it. That is what I do, and that is why it's completely different. It actually puts you into a perspective of healing and actually bringing it back into balance so your body can do what it needs to do, which in turn will allow your colon to be healthy. It'll allow your body to function properly. And with the mixed diagnosis, there are cases, I mean, you don't have to look too hard. You can Google so many different misdiagnoses. But one of my biggest things that I always come back to and remind clients of is there was a guy who was let me rephrase this. He went to the doctor and he was diagnosed with, I think it was stage 4 pancreatic cancer. It was a high stage pancreatic cancer. They gave him 3 months to live. Okay. So he just like, okay, the doctor's like, there's nothing we can do for you at this point. Just go home, enjoy your life, do what you need to do. So the guy went home. He, did what he wanted to do. He said his goodbyes and he died 3 months to the date. When he died, they found that they had misdiagnosed him. He had absolutely no cancer, but because of the power of your mind and what you believe and what you take on from people, you will literally bring that about and actually follow that. He died because of the belief that he had something that was going to kill him, not because he actually had something. They read the wrong chart to the wrong person, and he believed everything that doctor told him. And so he died. And it's just
that's the placebo effect. Is that what they
exactly?
Yeah.
Exactly. It goes forward and backwards.
It's amazing, but that's the thing. I mean, especially for a diagnosis like that. I mean, you would want to double and triple check. And again, listen, I've seen enough people personally that I've come across through real life or through shows that have had the worst diagnosis, and they were told that it's the end. And they're doing years later, decades later, they're doing great. They're living the life. They're vibrant and healthy. And so I do believe one thing. I mean, in terms of the belief part, right? The religious aspect is that we only go when it's time to go. And so there is an expiration term for us, but we got to do our best, to do the best, while we're here. And so that's a whole different discussion. But, while I exist, I got to do, to your point, the best thing that I have. And when I do my best, whatever is going to happen, right? If it's going to be good, at least I could live, like you said it. The message is really clear. You want to live for as long as you live, the healthiest, the happiest, the more dynamic life. You do not want to have difficulty breathing, difficulty doing things, and and struggling, and everything. To your point, is like a snowball effect. I mean, just just gonna get worse and worse and worse and worse. One leads to the other, and to your point, the worst is gonna get to your mind. then your mind's going to start believing that you're no good for nothing. And then
Hmm.
you're going to basically read. And I've seen it actually in real life, even through just social activity. People who tend
Hmm.
to just remote themselves from social life, they tend to collapse quicker and they just dissipate. People that are more
Yes.
social alive and they're active, they tend to be a lot more happier, healthier, and more, literally vibrant. And they
Right.
tend to,
Yes.
I don't know why, but it's real. I've seen the two level. I mean, in my world, I work in the insurance space, and we're in the senior markets, and I meet with seniors all the time, and
Hmm.
not all of them are made equal. I mean, some of them are like younger, in the heart and physical, aspect, even though their age is higher, and some of them they just are just collapsing and lesser and lesser vibrant, and you can see that, and sometimes even you can even see it like in younger crowds. You see like someone who is 40, 30, 50, and they look much younger, and vice versa. You see someone the same age, they look way older. It all
Right.
depends on how they treat themselves and what they do, from a stress level, from a health, aspect, what they do, the activities, the lifestyle, all of it matters. But the story you said is as sad as it sounds. First of all, it is ridiculous that they make a mistake, on a chart level, but it does
Hmm.
happen. And by the way,
Of
even
course
if
it
they did,
does.
even if they don't make a mistake on the chart, sometimes, I mean, again, it's records, right? Somebody just pressed the wrong number, whatever, and it switches. Codes
Yeah.
can also mean a different thing. You press an A instead of B, and it means something totally different. Many things can happen at that level. Human
Yes.
error
Exactly.
is real, and it can happen. So just don't take it for granted. Again, it is a simple thing. Double check, like we double check everything. If you're doing your
Right.
finances, you're probably going to double check your balance in a few times and making sure like all the bills are correct and who's taking money, whatever. It's your health. It's the best thing you have. You can't go wrong with that.
Right. And I think that brings a good point to remember that just because we live a healthy life does not prevent death, right? We are going to die. That is part of our life. Life and death go hand in hand. And I think it's important to remember that you shouldn't want to move forward with getting healthy with the hopes of just like not dying at a certain point, because we don't know when we're going to die. And in my life, like it was a bit very apparent for me very early on that you can go at any point. But the point of living a healthy life is to take care of yourself and to give yourself the best chance to live happily and healthfully. And the more you do that for yourself, the more you can actually enjoy things and go and do things and be active. And there's just so much more that you can do from living from that space. It's not to prevent an early onset death, because we don't know that. But during the time that we are here, that gives us a chance to live just a more fulfilling existence.
Definitely. And I think even, I mean, through scriptures, we're supposed to do the right thing by our bodies, right? It's a tree, this is like this is the most precious thing. It's a trust, and you got to do the right thing by it. So even if you're a believer in any aspect of a religion, that's almost a duty, right? And so,
Right.
but even if you don't believe, it's still the same thing. The duty still remains. You still want to live happy and healthy and
Right.
for as long as you want. So I think we are in agreement there. No matter what you believe is, you should,
Mm-hmm.
take care of this. Here's the thing: everybody's gonna at least do a headache in their life, and it's not fun. So when you have any other problem, you fever, headaches, these pain is gonna be there. Those three things are not fun to have. As small as the root cause is, or as damaging as the root cause is. So let's make sure we avoid all that stuff, because we don't want to live that status or of pain no matter
Right.
what. And then here's the thing, to your point, sometimes you get those pills to just numb the headache or whatever, but you're right, that's not telling you where the problem is. I mean, for example,
Correct.
fever, we know that if you have fever, that means there's an inflammation somewhere, there's an infection somewhere.
In fact,
The body is saying, hey, or the immune
yes.
system is kicking high, because they want to kill whatever those viruses and bugs in there.
Yes.
And so that's really how it works, right? So we know that, where everybody, I think, knows this rule. When your body is, you're not going to know, that's how it talks to you and say, hey, it's time for you to relax. I'm going to take care of
Yes.
you right now. And so we can do now with the technology, with the medicine, with all. And by the way, it's not just now. The stuff that you actually are using is ancient.
The original.
Yeah, it is ancient. I mean, it's years, centuries of practice, and we are today here because of those, ancient arts and sciences that existed,
Hmm.
and we took some of that and just, I guess, transform it to the new modern world. But the idea, it is still the foundation. And
Correct.
herbs, medicine, or herbal medicine and stuff, it's always been there. And it's still there. A lot of people actually are mixing that up with modern, and a lot of people are now
Mhm.
even deviating and moving back to the roots and using some of the,
Exactly.
the traditional stuff. Again, we don't want to talk the politics of, as to, like you said, people are
Mhm.
conditioned that we know. You go to a doctor because you trust them. And listen, there's controversy about that space too. There's, like you said, they're supposed to prescribe. I mean, there's some of the industry process in there. There's a lot of stuff that can go, and we can criticize all of it.
Mhm.
But at the end of the day, we can criticize, or we can just do the right thing, and that's it. We don't even need
Right.
to worry about it, right?
Exactly.
So and that's a simple way to look at it. Instead of me worrying like, wow, what's going on? And now I need to know what's going behind the scenes and why people don't care about my health. Listen, nobody is gonna care if you don't care. Just care about your health first and your immediate
Yes.
entourage, and that's it. One person at a time, and starts with yourself, and the rest is history. And I think if we all did that,
Exactly.
it wouldn't matter, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So Lynn, I have a question. I did mention you are a writer.
Yes.
So books. Do you have any books that we'd like to talk about?
So I actually have one coming. It's in the works right now, and it's called "Your Health Sets the Tone," and it's basically about everything that we're talking about now. About how it goes more into depth in as far as even your spiritual world and the physical world around you. How when you're not healthy, it affects every other part of your life. And it plays into the dynamics of your family. If you're not healthy, how do you have the energy to take care of your family, your kids? How do you have the energy to go out with your friends? The people that you invite in, it matches your level of health. And so it's all of the things that we talked about, including that, and really just fine lining it and bringing it back to the fact that if you are not living a healthy life, other things in your life are not going to be healthy either. And it's going to show up, and it shows up in the way that you express yourself. When you're healthy, other people notice you. When you're not, other people notice you for a different reason. And I think it really comes down to remembering that your first relationship is always going to be with yourself. If you cannot take care of yourself, other people are going to know that, and they're not going to be able to be around you in the way that you want them to. And so it's always checking in with yourself. Where am I? How do I feel? What do I need to do for myself? So then that way I can extend myself out to other people and to do other things. And so that is the book. The basis of the book is really just bringing you back to being the best human that you can possibly be.
And where do we expect it to be released and published?
Oh God.
Is it coming soon?
Within the year.
All
Yes.
right, all right. So we'll look forward to it, and yeah, maybe we'll
Yeah.
come back and talk more about it. But
Yes.
yeah, I mean, listen, congrats. I mean, that's a great thing to have something like that, because books are legacies, and they transform lives. And to your point, all the stuff that we talk about is there. It becomes a resource that people can literally look at it. Here's the path. Here's what you need to do. I love you again, your whole combination of mind, body, spirit, all of it together, because I
Mhm.
think that's the way we're supposed to operate. And again, the best thing you said, and well, not, but you said all of it is best. But one thing you just said now is the concept of, if you don't take care of this,
Mhm.
you can't do anything else for anybody else, and
Right.
therefore, and not only for your own immediate entourage and family, even society. I mean,
Exactly.
if you're not healthy, there's a good chance you're going to be a burden on the system or the healthcare and the cost of it, and we know that. I mean, it's so we owe it to ourselves. And frankly,
Mhm.
you don't want to go through the system anyways, because it's not going to be a fun
Right.
operation. I mean, again, we're not talking emergencies. If it happens and you need to,
Correct.
you got to do what you got to do. But if you can, prevention, right? It's all about preventative. As a
Exactly.
matter of fact, preventative medicine is the traditional way, and now we're like
Correct.
more of the emergency medicine, right? You're sick, you go. Generations have applied into this concept where I don't go to the doctor. I have no clue what's going on until I'm really like, down. And then I go to the emergency room, and
Mhm.
I get processed basically, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So as opposed to like, I'm ahead of the game, I'm always ahead. And that's the other thing. If any early detection to anything can be preventing, a worst case scenario. If you're too late, it's over, it's done. There's nothing, you can only blame yourself. Me, as a first, person here, I talk about this right now, but I try to practice the same thing, whereby I do
Mhm.
my physicals and try to check in and make sure that whatever it is, just to, as soon as I see, I mean, thank God so far everything is good, but just to, if I, to your point, we're not supposed to be obese. Just start feeling that the weight is not going or whatever. There's something I'm doing wrong, and therefore I
Exactly.
make adjustments. And so, and it's not going to be easy, folks. That's the other thing. This is not overnight. It's a complete package. Is, you look at it from the health, from all that. You do the right, you take the right measures, but also there is nutrition, as you talked about. It's important,
Mhm.
but there's also physical movement activity.
Mhm.
So Lynn, what do you say about that? Because I think that's also a big part of the deal.
Well, absolutely. I mean, we live in such a sedentary lifestyle now. The majority of people do. We sit at our desks most of the day, and then when we're done, we go home and we sit on our couch, for the rest of the night. And we've lost this touch of being in nature. We've lost this touch of using our body in, really kind of physically demanding ways. I mean, we used to do really intensive work outside pretty regularly, and we've just moved away from that so much. And our body needs that movement in order for everything, it stagnates, right? Like when we stagnate, our digestive processes stagnate and everything else stagnates and everything starts dying off, and we need that movement. Now there's also the other extreme where people do too much, right? There's like this toxic level of working out that people are like, I have to go to the gym every day for an entire hour, I have to push myself. That again is also, it creates a level of stress in the body that is damaging to our system. Stress is necessary, but there is a level past what we should be at that a lot of people take their workouts to. And so we need to remember that we need to stress our body enough to where it's getting the workout that it needs to keep our body in process, but not to overdo that, because it's like people like to go to one end of the extreme to the other. And it's like, oh, no working out, to I'm going to do CrossFit and all of this stuff every single day and just push myself as hard as I can. And they don't realize that that's damaging too. So like the physical component, just like everything else, our diet and our spiritual connections, it's like balance. We need to find that balance and to know that, okay, I need to go for a walk today. I fell into a really bad habit of just like being at home and sitting more than actually being out. And I'm a climber and I bike and I do a bunch of different things, but it takes a really strong awareness to be like, I notice that I'm being a little bit lazy today. I need to get out and go do something. I need to move my body, because that is what our bodies are made to do. They're not made to sit all day long. And I think it's when we can take ourselves out of our body and remember that we have a body. We are not our body. We have a body, and we need to take care of it. It is our gift. It is it's our transportation in this lifetime, and it's meant to be utilized and to be taken care of. And if we don't, it's just like our cars. If we don't put gas in it, we're not going to be able to drive it. If we don't take care of the engine, it's going to break down on us. This is our transportation. This was a gift given to us, and we need to take care of it. And a big part of that is its physical capabilities and to really just honoring that and doing what we need to do.
I love it. I mean, it's moderation, right? You can't go extreme one way or the other. You have to maintain. And you're right. I mean, I refer to it as an avatar.
Hey, we are Avatar. We are.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
So this is the avatar, and you
Mhm.
operate in this avatar, and you want to make sure that it lasts you enough for this matrix, if you want to
Right.
call it that. But the fact of the matter is, it's as real as it gets. And to your point, we don't over push it and overdo it. But I mean, historically, people did not sit the way we do. They were active. They wake up
Right.
early. They were doing chores and things, or working in the land and whatever they're doing. And then
Mhm.
they, by sunset, they're pretty much done. They just, they go collapse, and then they sleep a good night. That's the other thing, sleep. Very important.
Exactly.
We lost that concept. People are, losing sleep, patterns, every day, with the lights, with everything that we're exposed to. That's one.
Mhm.
Two, there's also that whole, I mean, there's debates or discussions about, like, successful people sleep very little, right? And so
Yeah.
there is that whole discussion about that. And maybe it happens to be the case, but there is no science behind it, in terms of like whether everybody that
Yes.
know that talks about a good If you need your brain to function, you need to be rested. If you need your body to
Correct.
actually support your brain, I mean, brain health is important, and I think I'm not talking about just the mental piece of it, the physical brain health.
Right.
If it's tired, if it's it's you're not getting enough oxygen, and you're like deprived, you're a zombie. I can tell you personally, I cannot operate without sleep.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
li- I'm a, I'm literally a good zombie looking person when I'm not sleeping. I mean, the exception of walking and just like being like this. I'm actually I feel it. So sleep to me is important, and but every single thing that is in medicine, old or new, talks about the balance.
Hmm.
And the importance of sleep, the importance of the body's. A lot of stuff is happening through sleeping. Your body is restoring, detoxifying, doing all the stuff. And also, like to your point, you mentioned something about fasting. We tend to eat now every time, whenever we feel like yeah, I smell something, let me just grab a snack. That's it. The art of snacking has become more relevant and common, which is not supposed to be that way. People ate when they were
Right.
hungry. That was it. I mean, you know I I've been in martial arts all my life, and one of the things that I've learned in one specific art is that they call it the ninja diet. And the ninja diet is really they didn't eat, only when they had to, and when their body is needing, they work out,
Hmm.
they work out, and then they eat, and that's it. And that's how they did it, and they maintain. And these guys, historically, the ninjas were pretty athletic, and very robust. But that's like a concept of where you eat when you need it, and now we eat when we don't need it. You said it.
Right.
Your body is the reason we're obese is that it's rejecting all that extra stuff. It doesn't need it. It's not
Right.
taking. It's taking more than what it's supposed to process in a day, and therefore it just stores it.
Stores it.
Okay.
Exactly.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna give us the impression of camels, but camels do have those things. That's their supply. It's all fat, right? We don't want to have that little camel pouch here, in the
Right.
front, right? But we do tend to do that, and unfortunately, now diabetes can do more of that. But then
Hmm.
again, to your point, diabetes is a result of something in previous
Correct.
lives. So all these things that are happening, they happen because we didn't take care of ourselves. And
Hmm.
the younger, and that's the other thing, as the younger folks, you know, we're supposed to be, aware of these things. Unfortunately, when we are younger, we don't care. We are resilient. We think we're
Oh
invincible.
my God. Yeah.
The world is, owing us money, and we're good. And nobody is, I don't want to hear no one. You don't tell me how to live my life, and that's okay. You have the right to live the life you want, but
Right.
know this, that in a decade or two, your body is not going to be the same. And now it's
Yeah.
like you mentioned the word irreversible. Some things
Hmm.
can be irreversible, and you can't go back. And
Yes.
so if you're listening and you're a younger person, please take care of yourself. That's all we're asking, and do the right thing by you. You don't want to take
Yes.
care of it. It's all good. Don't say Hurricane H, is dictate on us. I'm not saying it. That I'm just saying I want you to be as healthy as possible and live as long as you can, and happy and
Hmm.
healthy. That's all. So
Yeah.
Lynn, I guess we're coming to the end of the show. Any uh, good piece of wisdom that you can share with our audiences today?
I think it always just comes back to the fact that we need to take responsibility for our own lives, what we do with our body, how we, respond to situations, everything that's coming into our life. We need to stop and take responsibility for it and ask why. Why is this happening? Why do I keep, having these symptoms? Why do I keep running into these situations at work or with relationships? Any of these things, we need to stop and ask ourselves why, and really get to the bottom of that reason. I think, yes, the health is like the biggest component that I focus on, but one of the biggest pieces is finding out the spiritual reason behind it. Why is this person having this issue? Why are they still allowing themselves to be in this space? Is it a self-worth thing? Is it something from their past that they haven't healed through a trauma? There's so many things that people can be experiencing on a mental or emotional level that's causing them to continue these, bad patterns or habits. And I think it's just really important to start asking questions, start analyzing your life, and allow yourself to be curious about the life that you're living. And is this something that you want to continue doing? And 20 years down the road from now, are you going to be okay with where you're at, or this progressing in a negative way forward? If not, it's time to make a change and really just accept that and take responsibility for your life. You're the only one in charge of everything that's present in your reality right now. You can't blame presidents. You can't blame society. It's your choice to live your life and to be healthy or not. And I think that's the best thing that I can say for people. So
No victim mentality, right?
correct. Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
that's a big deal. I mean, well, here's the thing. We are by default sometimes not designed, I think we're by choice. We choose to look at everybody else as being the
Hmm.
culprit and everybody's fault, but not
Yes.
mine.
Correct.
Accountability is very difficult to have,
Hmm.
and pointing here is usually wrong. And
Right.
although when we point out others, we are like, what is it, 4-3, whatever, back to us. But the concept is, we tend to blame the world and every single circumstances around us, other than like, the choices we are, are
Hmm.
responsible for and take. And, again, it's awareness. And, sometimes hearing it puts it in perspective. So
Yes.
I thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's the biggest piece. If
Hmm.
you're aware there, everything else can start falling in place. Now,
Exactly.
now, Lynn, how can people reach out to you?
So the for functional medicine, my website is www.riverswellness.net. And that's a really easy way to find what I offer and to get in contact with me via email. And yeah, I would say that's the best bet. I have photography and documentary websites as well, but considering what we're focusing on, I think that's the best way. So
Oh, listen, we might come back and talk about photography and
yeah,
filmmaking. That'll be
yeah,
cool. But
yeah.
listen, thank you so much for a great discussion and for a lot of good tips and insights. And people listening, you know what to do. I mean, if you're not sure, just reach out. I mean, to Lynn, and
Yes.
and find out what you can do to identify if you have a problem. If you even if you don't have a problem, sometimes it's just, again, preventative. Let me check, see
Right.
what's up. So you can do it. I will have the description, the link of the site on the description of the show. So do check it out on my website. If you click on Lynn's picture, you will go to her site also. So, just follow her, and on social media, whatever, and see what else you can utilize, and maybe connect if you do need it, or if you know someone else who needs it. See, that's the thing. Sometimes
Yes.
it's not about us. You might know someone's going through a tough time. Guide them through what may be a solution that can help them, and you'll be satisfied just by seeing them happy. Especially if you love those people around you, you'll be doing good.
Yes.
All right. Well, Lynn, thank you so much for being with us today. We
Yeah,
we
thank
we
you for
enjoy.
having
I
me. I'm
enjoyed.
really happy. Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And folks, there you have it. We're at the end of the show. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. And as always, you have to do your due diligence. These are opinions. We have our own facts and whatever. We operate the way we want, but we're not enforcing this on you. But it's information that is valuable. It's resources that's available to you. If you choose to use them, great. If not, that's okay. You have that right. So that being said, we'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic, no guest, and we'll talk soon. Bye.